everything you do. So it could be down to the bite-sized chunk of a lesson, but it also could be true as an arch for somebody who learns how to play the piano or the violin, or somebody who engineers bridges. It's always an arch and arches within those arches. And what's lovely about it, it's really visual. So when you are planning your training material development, you can use arches to plan it, and you can also use arches to make sure you integrate SEL all the time. So let's see how that works. So effectively, the experience is the big arch, and you might have weeks or classes or days, and each one of those has to be set, held, and landed. And that gets you as an educator to think very carefully about what that means, because it can't just be a piece that just happens. You have to purposefully set it with your learners, make sure they understand what it's for, even if it's a very small chunk. And then when they're doing it, you need to hold them, even if it's in a digital space, and then you need to land it and reflect on it. This is an example of one that we did at training, and this is a plan for a course at a college. And this is just the beginning of some of those conversations. And this is where it becomes really interesting, is each arch represents a single session. But after a number of single sessions that fit into its own arch, you have to do a reflection. I call it the teardrop when you're drawing arches, but teardrops are the emotional side. And the more teardrops you have, the more reflection you have. The more reflection you have, the greater the opportunity it is for your learner to internalize some of that feeling around identity, interconnectedness, all those good things. And I love these because you can draw it. You can draw socio-emotional learning into your course curriculum design. So I really like it. And that's just an example of it. And if we focus on the teardrop, I mean, effectively the teardrop becomes a reflection as an educator on how you're going to go about that. So let's choose something that is completely non-emotional. Let's choose something like bricklaying. Bricklaying, is there any socio-emotional content to bricklaying? But there is, actually. You can integrate, if a bricklayer is out there learning to lay bricks, it's just a building function, and it's a very practical skill. You have to integrate in there some conversations about what it means. You know, if you were running your own business as a bricklayer, you would have to have relationships with customers. What would that look like? You're not just laying bricks, you have to get yourself to engage with people. Who are you laying bricks for? What are you building? Do you feel passionate about building something? Would you prefer to be building a school or just a wall for somebody's house? Or do you not care? They're conversations that you can have. And if you had that conversation with a bricklaying student, the outcomes would be very different. Obviously, it gets richer and richer the more emotive the subject. Yeah. Right. So, now you have to try it for yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to hand out pieces of paper. And hopefully we've got enough pens for everybody, just to fiddle with this. And what I want you to do is, I actually want you to close your eyes, because I want you to focus on what I'm saying. So please close your eyes. I want you to think about something that you've learned in your life that's really valuable to you. Some skill or some knowledge that you learned somewhere on your journey. It might have been taught to you by an amazing teacher. It might have been because of your interest areas. Now focus your attention on it. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about how it started for you. Was it an internal passion? How did it set for you? What was the beginning point? And I want you to think about drawing an arch from the time you started learning it to the time that you were really competent at it. And then I want you to draw little arches in between that demonstrate the little things that you had to get right, that you had to set, hold, and land during that journey in being competent. And I will wander around and see how you're doing and answer any questions, and so will my team. And that can be the end of the session. I hope it makes sense. Does it make sense? Okay. The library was seen as a place that you would go to read. But the teachers were very protective of the books, and you could never take books home. And I went to a new school, and on the first day, we had to go to a library period, and the principal's wife ran the library. And I remember going into this library where always there were rules and you weren't allowed to touch the books and you had to ask for permission. And obviously this amazing woman saw me in the library feeling a little bit shy and reserved. And she came up to me and she said, you know, are you okay? And I said, yeah. And she said, do you want to have a look at the books? And I said, yes. And she could see I was a bit nervous. And she said, well, you know, you can help yourself to any book. So I looked around and she said, what are you into? And I said, well, I love reading and I love books. And she chose a few that she thought I would enjoy. And then the breakthrough happened. She said, you can take those books home with you. And I was like, what? You can take the books home? She says, yes, take the books home with you. Go and read them at home. You can have them for 4 weeks at a time. And if you haven't finished them, just come back in and I'll fill out a card for you and you can have them for another 4 weeks. And it created this connection with her, and she became almost the custodian of reading material for me in my school career. Now, if I looked at that as archers, I would say that she had a huge influence on my reading. She set the scene for a different journey for me, and she held it for me while she was at the school, and she landed somebody who really enjoys reading. And it's a simple arch, but the reason why it was so valuable was because of this emotional connection. If there was no emotional connection, there was most probably no value for me. So that's one example. And I think that when you do your arches, you have to think about those moments that really affected change in you in terms of that learning journey. And that's where arches becomes a really practical toolkit for you. Are you guys finding it challenging? Okay.
Okay, so I have started my learning arch, and my selection was, so I've fairly recently learned how to surf. So that's my big arch here. And within that, there are many arches. So my first one is balance. I had to learn how to balance because I'm not very good at that on ground. You then have to learn how to, I added another arch for where to position your feet on the surfboard. Another one for, you have to know which direction you're going. And the last one is dedication because you have to practice. And then within those, there's obviously different little mini arches that I could include. For example, feet positions. I did a bit of research on YouTube to learn like different ways that where people position their feet, and depending on, I'm left-handed, so your feet positions are different. And then within that, there's reflection as well of how maybe at the end of a day where you just were not able to get onto the surfboard and stand, you have to think about why. Maybe do some more research. Maybe think about, maybe you were just having a bad day, ate food that wasn't good for balance or something like that. Yeah, I don't know if that helps.
Tell us about this little piece here. What were some of the socio-emotional elements that emerged from
Wow.
this journey?
So when I started the process, I thought it was just another skill I would have. But as I did reflections, I realized that I mean, you're in the ocean, you in a space that I grew up in, but I hadn't experienced in that way. It was a different way of looking at a familiar space, so it was quite refreshing. And I found that it connected me a lot to other people that were surfing, and you just build that relationship with them. And within that as well, it sort of also mirrored itself in my other things I was interested in. Dedication was one of them. Yeah, there were quite a few. Not sure if that answers your question. Thank you.
So the commonality of this amazing teardrop is that it's about joy, hope, interconnectedness, the richness of your identity. It's all the stuff that we should be including in our training. And what we love about this is it gives us a way of graphically drawing what that means, so that when we are developing anything, we know that we're taking into consideration how SEL is reintegrated into our classrooms, into our training materials, into our digital suites. So I hope it's been helpful. I'll also leave you with one more inspirational piece, unless the team wants to add anything else. Are you okay? Oh, right. Yes, okay.
So I've drawn this art of learning classical dance. I think it was very dear to me. It's a 7-year procedure. And I've please correct me if it goes wrong. So I think I was 6 when I joined it. In the first year, I was just learning rhythm. But the emotional drop was that my teacher was very loving. I think she had all the systems of AI, personalized learning, adaptive learning, because she could understand me. So she wouldn't push me beyond a boundary. The second year was just learning footwork. So the actual thing was learning footwork, but when I go deeper, she used to take us on holidays on weekends together. She would make us get food together so that when classes land longer, we all had food to eat, but we shared as a community. So that sense made me even want to go back more and more to that program. The third year was about learning narratives. So the dance was not just footwork and rhythm, but it was narrating a story through dance. And what that took me in deeper was, she made us dedicate the whole thing towards this one ashram called the Aurobindo Ashram in the south in Tamil Nadu in Pondicherry. So it was about dedicating your dance form for something larger. And I think that just stayed. So every time I feel the emotional drop took me through what I had to learn physically. Then year 4 was about, me able to express my own emotion through a dance, creating my own story and my own dance. But what it took me into deeper was introspection. I could go into silence with dance and I could see what am I feeling and how can I reflect that through a dance piece. Year 5 was about creating my own many forms of dance and learning beyond just that one classical form. And again, that was possible to learn beyond just the Bharatanatyam dance form and going into other folk dances because I had an amazing peer group. So when you reflect on the peer group that we created, the drop, the companions and friends that stayed with us just made learning anything very easy and fun. So I think like that, then we did shows outside of the city for other people. And the final thing was doing a solo show for 3 hours, which culminates the end of your entire learning cycle. And through all of that, like the 6 years drop was responsibility, because she made us responsible for our dance shows. Whether it's the music, sound, light, tech integration, background, stage decor, you take responsibility for things beyond what you do on stage as a dancer. So I think these little drops made that whole journey so complete. I sometimes feel that besides my K-12 learning at school, this one dance exercise of 7 years taught me from being nothing to accomplishing something in full. And I think the emotional drops are really, really important. So yeah, this is a great exercise. It's all here. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice. Anybody else?
Hi, good morning everyone. So I'll share my journey like this. So I have 4 major arches with me, and I'll start with the time when I was running a preschool, and with preschool, when children come in at the beginning of the academic year, you give about 10 days of settling time for children to settle down in the school. You don't just start teaching academics. And it got me to thinking that why do we give that 10 days? Because we want them to be emotionally settled. They're coming from home to school, new environment. So getting them to calm down, only then they'll be receptive to anything that's just being told at school. So somewhere this was there at the back of my mind, and during my preschool days I also volunteered at a girls' home, so shelter home. So there were children between 6 to 16, and we were told, could you please come and help us with the academics? So we would go there. We worked for 6 months, 8 months, but we were not seeing any change. So we said, okay, you know what, next Sunday when we go, we'll not talk about studies. Let's try and know them, what's going on, what's their story. Because they're coming from backgrounds where they are single parents or, challenged environments, so they are here. Let's talk to them about their insecurities. And when they did talk about it, we realized that, oh my God, they have so many fears. Let's try and get them out of that. So that was probably our teardrop moment where we said, okay, this is not just about academics. And this is the thing that is actually disturbing them, stopping them from performing probably, outside in the school. So then we started working on the social and emotional skills. We started researching because that's the first time we got to know that there is something like this, which gave birth to my organization called Learning Curve Life Skills Foundation, wherein we started researching more on SEL, tried to develop a curriculum. We were not even sure whether, we can develop a curriculum because this is based on behaviors. And how do I say that this is a behavior that a 6-year-old should show, or this is a behavior that 15-year-old should show? So that was my next arch where we were able to come up with something concrete in terms of SEL. And finally, the last arch was when we actually took it out to schools, and especially the low-income schools that we work with. And that's when we realized that it's not just children but the teachers as well that we need to address to. And every interaction that we have every single day with our children, with our teachers, that art just keeps going for us as a growing journey continuously, as much as it is for them. This is a great exercise. Thank you so much.
Be able to be in the sports arena again or not. So my official club organized a bike ride, and I participated in that, and I was very susceptible whether I will be able to complete 30 kilometers distance or not. They encouraged me, and I covered the distance. So that was the first socio emotional learning for me, because I was having an average speed of 18 kilometers per hour, while the endurance riders were having 40-42, and they never left me behind. They were with me, and we completed the distance. And this was 1 year. This was 1 year span when I spent time with them with a rented bicycle. I was not having my own bicycle. Next 6-month arc was I purchased my own bicycle and started riding at my own. That was just a push of that SEL. Then the third is I started longer distances and solo rides. Again, I was in the contact of the endurance riders, and they keep coaching on me on the diet, the practice, breathing exercises and all. And now me myself is an endurance rider up to 200 kilometers, 250 kilometers. And in this journey, I met with school kids, 2 major generals in the army, all along with the different backgrounds. And I came to know the views, the feelings of all these people, and it is now reflecting in my professional sphere also. So it was a great journey for me through SEL. Thank you.
Whether you're riding a bike, and then it's the interconnectedness piece, that value that we share this planet with other people, and there's magic, there's joy, there's happiness, and that's really what it's all about. So I hope you enjoyed it. One final piece of the puzzle though. So we've discovered our journey into digital was a bit nerve-wracking, because digital is a difficult platform from an SEL perspective. It's not easy to integrate SEL, and I don't think we've solved the problem. But what I'm trying to encourage as well is that educators play with video. I'm not too sure how you will engage with it, but playing with video has been a real eye-opener for us. And I'm just going to get the team to play a very short video, which we produced in-house. It's actually our first video series, or one of the first video series that we ever did. But what we tried to convey, and you can tell me whether it's successful, is a feeling of joy and happiness in the training material. And you can judge it for yourself. And it was done very simply on some cell phones and some low-end cameras with a few lights, and just cleverly thinking through the training series as a set of arches with teardrops. So have a look. We didn't do very well with the audio.
SMART checklist. SMART stands for specific, measurable, accountable, realistic, and time-bound.
Revisit your actions using the SMART guidelines. Step 1. Check that you have covered all tasks and activities. Try to be more specific. Give your action a title. Step 2. Add numbers to each action in order to be able to measure it. For example, how many chairs? How many people to feed? Step 3. Link each action to the team member best suited for the task. They are the one who will be held accountable for it. Step 4. Check that the plan and action steps are realistic. Step 5. For each task, allocate a deadline or date of delivery to make it time-bound. By when?
So the 2 people you see there are the facilitators of that particular program. They loved making that video because it gave life to the work that they were doing. And it took an afternoon to put together a little bit of learning material for their students. And it's fun, and it was engaging, and it works really well. So I'm just encouraging you to go that route. Anyway, I hope that it was an interesting presentation and there's some practical application. I don't know whether you have any questions. Otherwise, we can close the session.